I'd like to call the August 21st City Council Budget Workshop to order. Ms. Sykes, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Jernigan, Mr. Hill,
Here.
Ms. Young, Mr. Carter,
Present.
Mayor Witt, Mr. Rosenthal,
Here.
Mr. Martin,
Present.
Chief Butler.
Here. At this time, I will turn this over to City Manager Don Rosenthal.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and council members. Over the next 2 days, we're going to be presenting the city manager's proposed budget for fiscal year 2025. Your active engagement is encouraged as we go through each department, providing suggestions and comments as you have the time. It's crucial to note that any adjustments to the budget should be addressed during these sessions to ensure compliance with the state of Florida's trim requirements and its associated deadlines. Now, some notable changes include the following. Florida Blue health insurance increased 15% compared to last year, which is still a savings of $250,000 compared to the previous United Healthcare plan. Property insurance has increased by $236,764, reflecting a 15% increase. General police, fire, pension investment plans are doing extremely well, requiring minimal contributions on behalf of the city. There are several new positions being proposed. These will be discussed more in depth when the department's budget is being reviewed. There's currently about $2.1 billion in our ARPA funds. In order to balance the general fund's budget, we are currently utilizing about $4.3 million from the previous year's reserves of $27.9 million. The state of Florida provides municipal revenue estimates in late July and early August each year. These estimates are reflected in the general fund's revenue summary. Also included are permitting fees, occupational licenses, and other various revenues that are based on trends and forecast analysis. With that being said, the city's decision to bring permitting back from the county has led to a substantial increase of over $600,000 in permitting revenues. In addition, there are currently over $50 million in active projects demonstrating strong growth and development opportunity in the community. Our ad valorem currently proposed budget provides revenues based on the maximum millage rate of 5.7006, which is an increase in revenue of $848,110 compared to the current millage rate of 4.900 mills. Now, as previously noted, assessed property with a valuation of $250,000 would show an increase of roughly $180 for the entire year at that millage rate of 5.7006. Another scenario would be using the same rate being proposed by the school board at 5.3910, which would produce an increase in revenue in the amount of $520,137 compared to the current millage rate. As such, assessed property with a value of $250,000 would show an increase of roughly $110.48 for the entire year. It's important to note over the next 2 days that during these budget workshop meetings that a consensus is reached in regard to the millage rate to be adopted, as we must comply with the state of Florida's trim requirements and their trim deadlines. City manager has proposed that there will be no across-the-board salary increases. While some positions will not see any changes in their salaries, others did require adjustments. The majority of employees will receive we're proposing a 6% COLA raise, which is a 2-step increase on the pay matrix. The COLA increase will help employees with the increased cost of health insurance. At this time, we're going to begin with our all funds account. Well, before we start this, thank you for that, remind me of that. Before we start, we have several presentations we want to share with the council in the audience. We're going to call Nick Naducci up. He's a financial consultant. We're going to do an overall financial review of all the city's finances that we looked at during our study.
Thank you. Thank you, City Council. Thanks for giving me this opportunity. I know you got a busy schedule tonight. I'll try and get through this as quickly as I can. And again, Don, thanks for thinking of me. I appreciate that. So please interrupt me if you have any questions throughout the presentation. What I was charged with is on that second slide. And I was charged to do a financial overview and then provide some recommendations for moving forward. And again, general, not specific like Don was presenting. You can read through this detail about my background, and I've been in municipalities for many years. Don and I worked together at Village Grove Park, and most of my work has been done in Illinois, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. You can read through that if you like. My conclusion is all cities are different, but all cities have a lot of similarities as well. The next slide just worked in various different capacities in different communities, and you could go through that if you like. But generally, these are the things that I look for when I go into a municipality and try and do some work there. The accounting operations you have are one of your strengths. How do I know that? Credit to council, credit to your staff. You have very good staff, very qualified. Looked at your audit, looked at your internal controls, looked at your management letter, and very few comments. I go into cities where there's pages of internal control issues and comments, and the only things you have are the things moving forward. So you do very well on the accounting side, no internal issues. Your financial software, it's Tyler product, New World Systems. I've used that many times. It's kind of the standard in the municipal finance area, fully integrated. You have very good financial software. Your pension obligations, Don had just mentioned, your funding levels are 90, 103, and 85% funded, which is very, very good. I get into communities that have problems with that, and it's very difficult to get through that. Now, the only one that is not in there is the Florida pension system. Your outstanding debt, you have bank loans out there. I know you're going to be bringing a bond financial advisor in, and you should, to go through that and review that every year. Your fund balances are very good. The only thing that I did find is I found some what we call structural imbalances. I'll explain that in a bit. And in order to do future projects, Don had told me he was interested in doing housing authorities and capital planning and some other things. And structural imbalances allow you to do that, but you have some, it won't allow you to do that, but you do have fund balances that should help you in coordinating all those. When I look at a community, I have to simplify it for myself. And that's what I did in this case. Now, it's a complicated, very well-run organization. And again, the only fund in there is the one that I had mentioned. But if you look at this, the green box is the pension funds, and as you can see, the funding levels are there. And those funds are restricted. We won't be able to discuss those. In the gray box, those are also restricted funds. You do have some leeway in that sales tax fund. And then the blue box is your enterprise funds, and then the ones that are not highlighted are the ones that we're going to consider and talk about. And I simplified it further, and I know it's hard to see down here at the bottom. Oops. I know that's hard to see. But I further simplified that. I highlighted in yellow what your fund balances are. And again, it's very important to look at how your credit rating agencies look at you. And I know you're going to get a presentation from a financial advisor. I don't know if they're here yet or not, but financial advisors that look at your bonds will tell you that credit rating agencies like to see 6 months of expenses or 50% of your annual expenses. And you can see that you're way over that. If you kept the $7 million, which is down here, you would still have about $20 million added up to some of the others in order to do some of the projects that we're talking about. So that would help you address some of the, what we call structural imbalances. And what is that? Well, that's hard to say, isn't it? But what is that? That's a technical definition there. But you're going to review a budget tonight where you're going to use some fund balances or balances from prior years. You could do that, and you have the wherewithal to do that. You planned very well. You didn't overspend. You have the money to be able to do that, but you can't continue to do that. At some point, you got to look at structural imbalances. Do you have enough revenue to meet your expenses on a going concern? You'll get through the short term, and you get through it very well. And what you have to do is to kind of invest in yourselves just to make sure over the next 10-year horizon that you don't dip into that too often and too much. It'll affect your bond rating, and that'll affect your ability to borrow money in the future if you have to do that. And this is just an example of a structural imbalance. All it is if you look at if you look at the bottom, we can see that your fund balance is $176,000 and the fire fund went down to $147,000. It went up this year, but the reason is you transferred more in. Instead of the $289,000, you transferred in $574,000, and now you're down to $14,000. All it says is you didn't bring in enough revenue to meet those expenses. And you know, those have to be addressed at some point. You can't continue to go like this. At some point, you're gonna be transferring in a lot of that $20 million that you have to be keeping there. And I would make sure that when you do that facility analysis for the tax rate of fire, that you also include your, I'm sure they include the vehicles and the buildings. It's important to look at that. So whenever I do long-term planning like this, I tell cities there's two things you gotta consider. Number one is cities compete. All the cities in this area compete, all cities throughout the state compete. And then secondly, cities are here forever. By competing, what do you compete for? You know, you compete for employees, you compete for grants, public projects, businesses, control of projects, other projects that are done by other agencies that impact you. You compete for all that. And you gotta show your best side financially every time you do that. It makes a world of difference. Cities are here forever. Cities don't leverage out and buy out and move somewhere else. You know, you're putting up with, you have some of the decisions that were made prior to you that you're dealing with now. You know, your decisions that you make will impact future generations. So it's important to keep that in mind. And I always ask municipalities to look at what their defining principles are when you make financial decisions like you're gonna make in this budget. But it's important to identify what they are, and to also just kind of explore, why do you live here? Why did you choose to raise your families here? Why did you invest here? Very important to look at when you're looking at financial matters. And you do have a comprehensive plan, a land use plan, you have all the departments have capital plans. You gotta kind of coordinate those things. I think the one thing you're missing is a strategic plan, which I don't do. And you know, there's folks that come in and can walk you through this in a couple days and just come up with what your defining principles are. Very important to document those and to make sure that when you're making decisions, especially financial ones, that you don't impact that. That's gotta be one of the more important items that you look at. As I said, you do have available balances here. If you invest in yourselves, that's what I encourage communities to do, rather than use this to fill gaps from year to year. Take that initiative and invest in yourself, and use those available balances to look at and attract increasing revenue options in other ways. And those can be done in a number of different ways, but you want to have enough revenue stream to support all those activities. Now, what are some of the revenue enhancements? There's only so many ways you could do this in a local government. You could increase your EAV, you have a sales tax base, you have a public service tax, franchise taxes. I'm not real clear on the state revenue sharing formulas yet. But tonight, you know, when you review that budget, you're gonna be looking at short-term solutions. And you could always increase taxes. You could always do that. You could always decrease services. And I don't say decrease expenses, I say decrease services. You could always develop efficiencies, we should always do that as well. And I think you're looking at some additional fees in this budget year, and increasing taxes a bit, but that's a short-term solution. You gotta start looking long-term to determine how do you build up this base to support the level of services you have today and any increase in services that you're looking at in the future. This was probably not a good screen, but all I'm trying to present to you is that property taxes are based on property values. We call them assessed values, you call them taxable values. And residential, commercial, industrial, railroad, those are all built to farm. Sometimes it's built into that. And I took just a standard amount, every taxing district is saying. All I'm trying to show here is that if you increase your industrial base, if that doubles, you got a bigger number to get your revenue by. And what that does ultimately is it reduces the tax burden on the residents. You bring more industrial land, more commercial land, they're taxed at the same rate everybody else is, I believe. That brings more revenue. Now, you gotta realize how does that impact you. You got a defining principle that you're running by, whether you wanna do that or not. But anyway, you should look at this as, all I'm trying to present is that increasing those without any impacts on your defining principles decreases the burden. Now, the taxes aren't gonna decrease if you bring them in, they're just not gonna increase at the same level. Because you'll be bringing in more revenue and you'll have a bigger tax base to get that from. Now, you're in a growth area, whether you like it or not. You're in a growth area. The growth is coming, and it's knocking at your door. I took a ride around today, and it's at your city limits. And the drive-in today, I saw the growth coming in from all the distribution facilities and industrial facilities. Growth is coming, unlike where I'm from. And you could use that to your benefit. You could control the growth, or you could be controlled by it. And what I'm trying to point out here is that whether the development goes within your city limits or nearby, you still put up with the impacts. If you allow that nearby you, if you allow distribution facilities and bigger facilities like that, you still put up with the traffic, you still put up with the noise. And there are job opportunities, which is the benefit, you get that both ways. But if it's located within your corporate limits, you could control that development. You could control the appearance, regulate the traffic so that it doesn't impact that. I was sharing with the folks at lunch today that I was with a city that did not control the development, and they have cargo containers driving right through the center of the town, and they can't stop it. If you control that development, you control the traffic patterns coming in and out. That's coming here. It's a good idea to get a handle on that. You can get developments to contribute to your capital plan, increases your EAV, your public service tax, and your utility usage. So what I'm trying to point out here is growth is coming. It's best to control it now while you can, and not let someone else control it. I mentioned that I work in the West Belt pretty much, and you're in this growth area, and you're kind of at a crossroads when I see this, where you're in between two, Jacksonville and Tallahassee and Gainesville and Valdosta. It's a very good place to be in. So you're kind of at the crossroads where development is going to come here at some point, and you're seeing companies invest. I know Weyerhaeuser is a lumber company, and they invested heavily here, and we have a lot of forests here. Big investment in that industrial park. Most cities in the Rust Belt would die, to have a company that size located in an industrial park. But you're in this growth period. The Jacksonville port, that's one of the largest ports in the country. And as that expands, what you're going to see is there's only so many cargo containers they can offload. Those ships come in, and there's 5,000 to 10,000 cargo containers on each one of those boats. Right now, they unload them, they put on trucks or trains, but eventually they're going to max out. And they're going to be looking for inland ports farther down the road, so that they'll take these cargo containers off the ships, put them on a train, they'll go to an inland port, go through customs several miles away. And you're in that mode right now. I can see all the distribution facilities when they come in. So it's good to stay on top of that, just to know what their growth, just to know what their plans are, to be part of that, to understand what's going to hit, but it's going to hit somewhere around here, because you're just in that track to the Mississippi River. All the boats that come in from the Atlantic or the Mississippi River on the train routes to somewhere within that there's going to be a distribution facility. However, you could benefit by those if you go ahead and understand what their opportunities are, what they're looking for in the future. And what these things do, all these growth opportunities that you're looking at here, provide entry-level jobs, skilled trades, engineers, management, shopping opportunities. And you have a number of things here that are just very attractive to grow and to develop. That airport, your public use airport, you could bring in aviation industry, your industrial park, warehousing. I don't know if you know this, but you're on Weyerhaeuser's website. They're an international company, and they have about 6 or 8 industrial parks that they're trying to sell. They have an industrial park in British Columbia, Louisiana, North Carolina, but you're one of them that they're trying to sell. Lake City is one of those. That's a national concern. So people are looking at that every day. On the commercial side, as I said, you could draw from the areas around you. I took a ride out to the college today. That's a big campus, and that's a growth opportunity as well. Yeah, I don't know exactly what their plans are, but it always is. Now, what does this all do? This drives your housing. If you take advantage of these growth opportunities, all the people who work here, they're not going to want to drive an hour every day to work. They're going to want all the levels of housing, the entry-level housing, and it'll increase the demand for housing. And you have some opportunity for growth in your downtown, and you have a nice downtown. It's well kept. You have some vacancies. Unfortunately, you don't make a lot of money in downtowns, but you have to take care of them, and you want your downtown to be vibrant. It takes a lot of work to get that developed, and you kind of owe it to the people who came before. But you have a lot of history in this town, and you've got to take care of that. So just generally, when you're looking at industrial and commercial development, impacts the city if it's in the city limits. Minor expenses unless it's a big distribution facility. I think the police chief would know better than I. But, I had an industrial facility an industrial park that's 2,600 square feet. They brought in 11,700 a day. That you got to control. If you let those things grow, they'll be nearby you, and those semis will be here anyway. The good thing about commercial and industrial development is the schools get an increase and they don't have any expense. That's a way to pass on that increase to them. And so when I look at this, if you're looking at growth is coming. You could use that to help your structural imbalances long term. You're going to take care of the short term ones, and you're going to survive. You're going to do well because you plan for it. But what this kind of shows is how every development should be evaluated. And you should complete this analysis with numbers tied to these, so that you at least know what the total impact is of the development. You look at all those defining principles, as I was saying. Is this part of your plan or is it not? All the revenue increasing capabilities. I looked at cold storage. Cold storage uses a lot of utilities. You get a bunch of utility tax from that if they were located in your town. So you got to analyze it. And even if you're saying no to a development, it's good to know what you're saying no to. And have the department heads analyze each one, in each long-term plan that you're looking at. Now, one of the things that I always encourage towns to do that are kind of on the cusp of growth, looking at their balances, is to mention those two things. As I said, you got to be in a position where you're going to compete, and you got to be in a position to understand that I'm making this decision. It's going to be impacted on the city for a long time. My decision is going to be here forever. And I know years ago when I was in a growth community, and the developers would always come in and ask you for a copy of your audit and bond rating, because they don't want to make a big investment in a town that's not run well. They like towns that kind of float under the radar, and they're going to make a big investment there. They want the city to be to also be competitive and to have a decent bond rating. Certainly does help. So I encourage towns to take the step, all the steps necessary to increase your bond rating, or at least get your bond rating. And I know, is your financial advisor here? Yeah. Presentation. Oh, okay. She can cover this in some detail, but I always encourage towns to take the necessary steps to do that. you have to do it from a kind of a management standpoint. Takes a while, can't do it overnight. I don't think you have a bond rating now. But that just shows that the city is well prepared. And, from a financial perspective, and I gave a definition of that here. What all this essentially says is from the accounting side, you do very well. From the financial management side, it's a little bit different. And what that does is that's the one barometer in financial markets that shows that your finances are managed well. And it's a lot like your own credit rating, and I'll show you that in the next slides. And again, it's, as I said, when you're looking at things that you want, obviously you made a decision at some point that you want your audit to be clean the way it is. And you did that, and that's a good standard to live by. Second thing you should look at is that bond rating. I think that's real important, and that does help when you're going through an attraction effort. And all this essentially means is that when you're dealing with structural imbalances, this does help when you're dealing with them. And I just compared the Moody's, S&P, and Fitch rates to the personal finances. So we all know what these credit ratings are. If you're in the 800s, you're real good. Well, if you're in the AA category, you're real good. And that's where you want to be. That shows everyone you're well managed. You're managing for the future. You don't want to be in this BBB category here at all. That's a speculative investment for anyone, but it does show that you're very well managed. And then how do you achieve this? How do we get there? Normally I start at the bottom here. There's a couple of certifications that you get. Now, any one thing is not going to get you a good bond rating, but what you're trying to do is you're going over all these plans to manage your finances for the long term, and those are what the rating agencies look at. We're looking at your credit. So there's a couple certifications that I'll go over on the next slide, and from the management side. Right now, you replace vehicles on a regular basis. It's good to put that all into one plan. You start there. Facility reserve plan is basically you bring someone in to analyze all your structures, all your buildings. How much money should we set aside every year to maintain these? How much money should we set in reserve? You have roofs, you have HVACs, tuck pointing that needs to be done. That has to be set aside. That gives you a good picture of how much money you need in total to maintain those facilities. The capital improvement plan, all the departments have long-term plans, putting all those together under one umbrella, then working with your financial advisor to do a debt plan on top of that. And then the last thing you do is you have a long-term financial plan, which is kind of the overarching policy that will address all these. And then once you get these done, updating them isn't that difficult. And it does make budgeting a lot easier, and it does let you see what the picture is in the future and how much revenue you have to actually bring in. So when I do these, I like to take a two-tier approach to this. The credit rating agencies look at your economic development. They just do. It's a thing they look at now. In the old days, they just looked at their financials. When I was first in this business, they didn't look at any management at all. Now they look at that kind of in total. So I usually split these up between the management side, financial management side, and the economic revenue enhancement side. And you can see what they look for. They look for a well-defined, coordinated economic development strategy. That tells a credit rating agency, are you interested in moving in the future? What's your plan? Are you coordinating that with the other taxing districts? That's very important as well, with your own business community, with your own desires, showing them your defining principles. So these are the things that they'll look for. And as I said, any one of these won't get you the better bond rating, but doing them all, it's kind of like when you go for a mortgage loan, you have all your tax statements and all your bank statements and all the information. And you'll have all the information when you start preparing these. It does help you with long-term budgeting, does help you manage your organization. The GFOA certifications, that's the Government Finance Officer Association. They have a budget certification and an audit certification. As I said, you have a clean audit, but what this certification does is it puts historical data in the format that the credit rating agencies look at, and all of you can look at it every year. There's 10-year histories in it, there's a little bit more narrative in it, but it just shows that you need a higher standard than the standard everyone else has to meet. The budget is the same way. What they'll do is they'll say, okay, I understand where you've been, but where are you going? Now, the budget award actually has performance measures, goals, and objectives, things that you, standards that you set, you say, okay, staff, here's what we want to accomplish over the next several years. And that's what that budget certification does. I used to review budgets for GFOA, did it for about 8 years, and you get to see budgets from all over the country that are very impactful and very helpful in trying to manage the finances of your organization. I mentioned the long-term debt plan, your capital plans. Now, some of these down here are pay-as-you-go plans, they're like 1 page. But a lot of these are, big documents. And you can see at the bottom here, I suggested that you hire a bond financial advisor. It's always important that you have your debt looked at every year, that you know what your capabilities are for issuing debt. And because you may have to, that's something you got to keep in your pocket. So along with those, we talk with our hands. But along with good fund balances that you have, you also want enough room to issue debt if something catastrophic happens. And this sets you up for that. This sets you up to do things on a long-term basis. So, in concluding this, you can't delay this too much longer. It's best if you start getting into this, start chipping away, and start looking at those different things that it takes to achieve that good bond rating, the good economic development plans. And initially, as I said, I did a financial overview and I made some recommendations. And you got to be prepared to compete. If you're competing with, you found an industry that you really wanted here, you're competing with everybody around you, and that's just the name of the game nowadays. In the old days, a company would come in and say, we're going to locate here. And now they're coming in and they're saying, what could you do for us? And if you don't give it to us, we're going to the next company. You got to be prepared. And having all these things prepared, like I said, is kind of a good way to handle that when that time comes. And what I had mentioned is to deal with these structural imbalances, you have to start looking at all the things the bond rating agencies would and look at it long term. And how are we going to satisfy that in the long term? You can't do this overnight. It takes a long time, but at least you're working on it. And that shows a lot of development. Take the necessary steps to secure a bond rating, develop a procedure for reviewing developments. What should that look like? How do you want to review every potential development that comes in? This item, coordinating your plans with the other taxing districts, very important. If you start coordinating your economic development with the county, with the school district, with the college, you got some big organizations here that you want to all be moving in the same direction. I've been in many places where we're extending a road and the school's going, what are you doing it for? Our school's going over here. And you've got to be on the same boat with everyone. I know it's difficult sometimes, and you have differences with other taxing districts, and rightfully so. You're going to have arguments and disagreements. But from an economic development standpoint, it's important that you try and coordinate that, have that common thread, have that one program that we're all trying to achieve. I would conduct a strategic planning process as soon as you can. That's an interesting process to go through. It helps you think through a lot of your defining principles and some of the things you're looking at out into the future. And developing that long-term economic development strategy is kind of key. That's something that an agency would like to be able to say, okay, at least they're working on this. And as I said, it's a good idea to keep track of what's going on at the Jackson Port. That's going to have a big impact on traffic coming through here and development coming through here. And then once you get these plans developed and organized with the other districts, it's important then to run it past your own business district, your own businesses here. And they have a good feel. They know the real estate community. They know, what's been happening here for the past several years. And you all want to, as I said, you want to drive forward together. So I know I'm a little bit long-winded, and I apologize, but I just wanted to give you a complete analysis of when you're dealing with those structural imbalances that you're going to have from year to year. You're very fortunate that you planned for this and you're prepared for it. And you're able to adopt these budgets and not decrease services. But you can't do that forever. It just seemed like the organization I would like to say, okay, let's start working on this on a long-term basis. At least we know what we're missing, we know what we got to shoot for, we know what we got to strive for. And hopefully I'll turn it over to Don. Do you want to cover anything?
Yes. Let's ask our, the financial advisor from, Donovan Associates to come up. Is that Jamie? Thank you, Nick.
No presentation, I'm just gonna talk tonight. First of all, thank you all for having me here tonight. I was kind of put on the docket very last minute. One of the council members found out about a strategy that we offer at the company that I work for, and he thought it was one of the most prudent, most optimal investment strategies for the budget. So I'm actually here to talk about the budget, if there was any confusion there. So, should I proceed?
Please.
Okay, great. So, again, like I said, I work for Dunham and Associates. We are an asset management company, and we are a trust company. We're based out of San Diego, is where our asset management company is located, and our trust company is based out of Nevada, Wyoming, and Colorado. I am Jamie Jones. I'm the regional director for Dunham. I cover the entire Southeast territory, and I've been with Dunham for almost 2 years now. My background is been in the business for about 10 years as an investment advisor representative and also a registered representative. So I've got my Series 65, Series 7, Series 63 licenses. Dunham has been around for about 40 years. Just quick background so that you know about Dunham. We've been around for 40 years, $5 billion in assets under management. We work with ultra high net worth individuals, and we work with institutional clients. And we manage institutional money that's amounts combined total is about 1.3 trillion in assets. So that's just a little bit of background, and the strategy that I'm here to talk to you about today for the budget is Dunham's. I pick this up. Is Dunham's Insured Deposit Marketplace program product. So it's a program, and I guess what you could say is that it's a pooled bank program of over 200 participating banks that provides FDIC insurance up to $50 million. So your principal is not at risk, and what I've been told so far, just coming in at the last minute, is that you have a budget of about $47 million. Is that correct? So this product will insure your $47 million of up to 50. Will insure it completely. There's no risk to your principal. It's FDIC insured up to 50 million in one account, one single account. And so this program also has a very compelling yield, about 4.5 times what you're currently earning and what your current rate of return is. So right now, this strategy is actually yielding an annual percentage yield of 4.65% net of all fees. So that would be net to you, 4.65% yield with full principal protection. And if we did the math on that, if you were to have invested in this strategy at the beginning of this year, and you were to be invested towards the end of this year, you would earn an additional rate of return over your principal of $2,185,500. So the other great thing about this strategy is that it offers daily liquidity. So not only do you have principal protection of $50 million, which is something that you really can't find anywhere, and a compelling yield that you can't find anywhere, but you also have daily liquidity. You can transfer money in and out, ACH, wire, check, cash, with the push of a button, ease of use, and there's no fee to transfer in and out, as much as you want, all day long. You have your own account set up, one single account, and push a button and transfer your money in and out. So So based on what I've been told about your budget, you know, I think that this could be, and there's more that we could even do with this strategy than what I'm just telling you, but I just wanna hone in on the fact that of those three things. Full principal protection, no risk to your principal, compelling high yield, net of all fees of 4.65%. And that's the annual percentage yield. And then daily liquidity. So with that said, and I also want to stress that, again, this is a pooled bank program of over 200 banks across the United States. So it's a diversified program, and all these banks have FDIC insurance of up to $250,000. But by just going into this one single strategy, you have that $50 million FDIC insurance. And there's ways we could also play this too. And the yield is tied to the Fed funds rate. So it's a very stable yield. If you compare it to a money market's yields tend to fluctuate, and they're not FDIC insured. In fact, when I worked at JP Morgan for several years, we had several money markets before the pandemic when rates were at zero that had a negative yield on it, and so it broke the dollar. So that's not what's going to happen with this product. So this is a strategy that it could help you generate a lot more revenue than what you're currently generating, about 4.5 times the rate of return. And that's just if you reinvest the yield back into the strategy. Just keep reinvesting it. But you know what else you could do? Is you could take that yield generated, keep your principal intact, keep your principal all fully there, invested, no risk to your principal. You can take that yield generated from the principal and you can put a portion of it or all of it into a fixed income portfolio, yielding roughly 6%, a diversified fixed income portfolio of the high investment grade, AAA treasuries, corporates, all kinds of different types of bonds. So you wouldn't lose principal, but you have the opportunity to actually earn more return than just the yield on IEM if you consider doing that kind of strategy along with this strategy. Or you just reinvest the yield back into it. Or you can just take a portion of the yield. Take 50% of the yield, reinvest back into IDM, take 50% of the other portion of the yield and invest it into a bond portfolio or yielding 6%. And right now is a time where, today the Fed had their Federal Open Markets Committee meeting and they basically stated that they anticipate potentially lowering rates very gradually in September. And when rates are going down, that helps bond prices. This is the first time in several decades where we have an opportunity to actually earn a great total return on bonds. I know but before I was talking about the issuing of muni bonds for the city, and that's great. And that's going to be great for people who buy those bonds, because if rates go down, that's only going to make the bond price go up and lock in a higher yield at the same time. So now's a great time to go into bonds. As rates start to come down, Fed starts to cut rates, and they're going to do it very, very gradually. They're not going to do it quickly like Volcker did back in the day, because it can't. Our economy is not stable enough for that to happen. So rates are going to be higher for longer, which means that IDM, the strategy, is going to be a long-term investment strategy that's going to yield you a much higher rate of return, principal protection, daily liquidity. So I'm going to end there if you have any questions.
Well, you had me at 4.65%. Our current yield is under 1%.
Okay.
So I want you to come and talk about that so the
Sure.
The board can see all the possibilities.
Sure.
So thank you for doing that.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
that.
You're welcome. And I'm sorry that it was last minute because I was asked to come talk, but I can send you all the prospectus and talking points, et cetera, anything that you need.
I would appreciate that.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Now let's move on. We're going to start with our all funds, and Angie, can you start us off with that?
Next is going to be going over our general funds revenues. first item on the list is the ad valorem taxes. In the budget currently is the maximum millage rate of the 5.7006 mils. I would ask the council to kind of voice their opinion on where they want to go as far as the millage rate. That way we have an idea of what direction we need to go.
I'd like to remind the council that the school board went 4.391 mills. And we're hoping for that. We realize that we probably won't be able to go to 5.7. But if we can, we're hopeful for at least for 5.391, which is the same thing as school board.
If I may speak, the issue I have with that is, we just did a tax increase. And I know when we look at this millage rate, we're looking at rates were coming in, but it affects all of us. And here again, it's almost like we're double taxed, if I can use that verbiage for us. I'm really not inclined as of this point.
So Ms. Young, you're wanting to stay at the 4.9 mils, the current millage rate?
That's my mindset coming in, just give me a couple of minutes, like the other ones,
I'm of the mind at the moment that the last few years, property taxes have increased quite a lot, so if we kept the current rate, revenues would still be significantly increased. I'm not crazy about the idea of increasing it either, given that people are already paying a lot more in taxes than they were a few years ago. And not the tourists on the half-cent thing, but of course the millage rate is the property tax.
Well, I agree with you as well. I don't want to raise the millage rate. But somewhere down the line, we're gonna have to do something. We've been kicking this, as they say, kicking this can down the road for a while. So at some point, we're gonna have to.
Yeah, I think, and I mean, if we come to some sort of negotiation on some sort of a raise, it is true that we haven't raised it in a while. It is true that it is in talking to finance, it's significantly lower than a lot of the areas around us, but of course, then again, that's also a boom, like to some degree, that's one of the things we have going for us is a lot lower taxes than some of the other places in the
Yeah, and again, as I said, prior meetings talking about tax increase, and I understand everything has increased, everything has gone up in cost, and it just makes sense to go up in taxes wherever you can to bring in revenue. But my heart just looks at mainly these senior citizens who are barely making it. And then for them to have to fall into higher taxes again. And we may look at it that they don't maneuver a lot, but they do, and it affects them, it affects everybody. So it is tough, and I do realize that's where we are in 2024, and we happen to be the one sitting here and it falls in our lap. But if we do it, we gotta be mildly, do it in a mildly fashion.
Well, I'm sorry.
What are y'all proposing now?
We were proposing 5.391. That's the same as the school board.
5.391.
If the 5.3910 millage rate is acceptable to council, that ad valorem, revenue would actually go down $327,973. That would be only an increase of $520,137, increase from the current millage rate. If that's acceptable to council, we would still have to address that deficit of the $327,973 within the budget. Whether we would want to increase the surplus, the reserves to cover that, or we would have to make some cuts within the budget in order to address that amount.
And if I may, in the conversation that we just had before this conversation, we were talking about the structural imbalance. Structural imbalance is something that causes failure over time. And we want to fix that imbalance before it leads to any kind of failure. You know, that's what happened in places like Detroit. They had a structural imbalance and never fixed it. We're not near that point now, but that's the direction we're going in if we're going to maintain and allow a financial structural imbalance.
If I may, here's what I think I'd like to see. A lot of us are pretty new, and we're about to get a couple more new people. Mr. Rosenthal, you're new for us. I agree that we need to address these imbalances. I agree that it was an excellent list of things we need to work on and get better at. I think that we use the surplus to cover the imbalances this year. I think we spend the next year addressing some of those concerns before increasing taxes, and we reevaluate that next year once we've spent a year working on some of those structural changes. That's my thoughts.
If I may, that's certainly an alternative. It's just that the problem doesn't go away and it gets greater over time. And once again, you will kick the can down the road. I'm suggesting that's not a good policy to follow if we're going to fix that structural imbalance. Even if we just had a minimum increase, it'd be better than no increase, so that we go a little ways towards fixing that imbalance.
Well, what would be a minimum increase?
Well, I think right now we're only at 5.391. I think it's only about 0.048. Double check for me, Angie. I think that's about 0.048 of an increase. So we could increase it half of that. Instead of 0.048, 0.024. But we should have some increase to help us to keep us from taking money out of reserves, because that's just not sustainable long term. How would the board feel about 5.241? 5.241.
Just so the council is aware, if we stick to the 4.9000 mils, that would be a $848,110 deficit to the budget. So that would either have to be covered by surplus or cuts within the budget.
If we went with 5.241, we would only be increasing by 0.331.
I'm sure as we move along, we'll see where some cuts can be in the budget. I don't think that's gonna be a problem.
Well, for $800,000, it would have to be a major cut, like the 5 police officers that the police chief wants.
We'll have to do something, we'll have to start somewhere.
And we can discuss this in the next, in tomorrow's budget, if that's what the council would like, but I would need to know what that figure is for the, resolution for the September 3rd meeting.
And I'd like to know if any of the council members need any additional information or anything that I can give you to help you make that decision. Just let me know. But at this point, we're gonna move on because the council can make that decision at the next meeting.
So, looking at the overall revenues, most of those figures come from the state of Florida. Everything else is based on trends. As you can see, the permitting has increased because the county is, or the city has taken back over the permitting from the county. All the other figures, like I said, came from the state of Florida. We do have, the solid waste went up about $60,000. And also the rent royalties from the Blanche Hotel, that's basically our rent refund discount. That went from $267,000 to $301,000. All the transfers from the water, sewer, and natural gas have stayed the same. As far as the ARPA funds, you see left is just a 2.1 million that's left over from the other expenditures that we've had over the last 2 years. And that would leave a prior year surplus using the reserves with this budget at 4.3 million. Now that would change depending on what we decide for the military. Does anybody have any questions on those?
Okay, I'll turn it over to the clerk for the city council's budget.
I'm on page 6. I'll just briefly go over where the major increases were in the council's budget for this year. Angie, you can actually take an item in account 34, the 2025 election expense. We have budgeted $45,000 as an expense in that, but that won't be needed since the council has agreed to put that on the ballot this November. So there's $45,000 there that can be cut from the budget. Additionally, there was an additional about $25,000, just shy of $26,000 increase in travel and training. A lot of the council has been traveling to the events this year, not just 1 or 2 persons attend. We've seen the entire council go to events. So there was a significant increase. I went ahead and budgeted 5 members attending many of the conferences that are offered to the council. So those are the 2 main areas in the council's budget where the increases were actually allocated. And if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer anything specific that you may have.
Thank you. Next is the city manager's,
Mr. Rosenthal, I'm so sorry. May I back up just one moment?
yes.
May I have, I did receive notification that in the 54 account, under the Florida League of Cities annual dues, a notice that they are going up from 1974 to 2069, 2069, if that could be adjusted, please.
Okay,
And that's all I have. Thank you.
okay, thank you. Next is the city manager's budget. The city manager's budget. We're increasing the salary for an additional assistant city manager. Looking at somebody being in charge of the housing department that we intend to operate and some of the other functions that we intend to bring on board. That was the most major increase in the budget overall. We also joined the ICMA. We're going to be paying for those funds. Nobody else?
Mr. Rosenthal, could you back up?
Yes.
This issue about additional assistant city manager, it has came up in the past prior to you,
Okay.
and, I opposed it then, and I'm opposing it now.
Okay.
Like I said, I guess we're trying to get ahead of ourselves, I would say.
Okay.
You said something about the housing authority. I think we need to get the housing authority before we start putting people in place to oversee it.
Okay, fair enough. So we'll strike that from the budget. We also increased, for the Ezra conference attendance and ICMA conference.
I'm sorry, Mr. Rosenthal, what, I missed that, what were you saying?
I said we have an increase for the Ezra conference, ESRI conference, and for the ICMA conference, for myself and the assistant city manager. And a bunch of other conferences here, you can see the Tyler, NIGP, and Growth Management Conference. And a vehicle for myself.
Add a vehicle,
Yeah, we added a vehicle for the city manager,
and what happens to the vehicle?
the assistant city manager.
So the city manager doesn't have a vehicle.
Yes. I had a vehicle, we had a vehicle for myself, and the city manager, the assistant city manager gets a vehicle that I had. Okay?
So you're purchasing a new vehicle for city manager and you're passing on the one you have for assistant city manager.
Exactly. I guess that's done by Enterprise, I guess that was scheduled, if I'm not mistaken. It was already scheduled.
If I can.
Go ahead.
So what he's saying is the budget for the 2024 Traverse, we already have that as part of our lease program. That's what he's currently driving. The vehicle that he passed down to me is scheduled to be turned in. We're actually looking at purchasing this vehicle to kind of save some money because it's not that many miles on this vehicle. So we can actually adjust this number when I get with procurement and actually see what the cost is to purchase it.
Yeah, so by purchasing the vehicle, it actually knocks money off of my vehicle. I think about $8,000, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
Okay. The next is if there's no questions on that, no further questions, the next is the city clerk's budget.
Mr. Rosenthal, may I just verify on the position schedule for the city managers, are we putting the assistant city manager fiscal year 25 budget back down to 1 for the total positions in that department is 6?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Was that also to include, removing the property manager, or are we keeping the property manager? I was under the impression by Mr. Hill's comment that we were removing the.
So we had some situations where certain people were able to purchase land that we didn't even know we had. So we were gonna also get a property manager to manage all the city's property.
I'm not inclined for that. I don't think we have enough property really for that. I think we can manage what we have without a property manager.
Would that be an internal employee or?
That would be an internal employee. So if you think that we don't need that,
I don't think
is that the consensus?
Well, how would somebody purchase property from the city?
Well, they're purchasing, when property comes up, becomes available, they're paying purchases on the tax rolls. So I want to keep track of all the city's property.
And we haven't had anybody in the past to kind of oversee this? How would we do that?
I couldn't find anybody that had any, direct, I can print out printouts of the property that we own, but I don't see anybody managing that property. I don't see anybody making sure that, we don't have any problem with that property.
think the question is there anyone already in-house who can handle that responsibility? Was it shared or however?
Or for that matter, is there an option to outsource?
We can look at outsourcing it or sharing it in-house, we can do that. So, strike that too.
I would be more inclined on in-house.
Okay.
So that one will go to a zero, making the
Yes.
5, okay. Mr. Rosenthal, are you ready for me to go over the clerk's
Yes,
budget?
please.
Okay.
Oh, one more thing. And Mr. Rosenthal, I understand what you're trying to do, but I think we need to try to grow into what you're trying to do.
Okay.
Instead of just,
Well, the problem with growth, Councilman, is that you need people to grow. I give you a case in point is our growth management section. Now, that growth management section, without the gentleman that's there now, it had to be done by the county, because we didn't have people that could do that. But with one man that's really doing two functions for the city, we were able to get $600,000. So growth is possible, but you gotta have the people there to look at the growth. Another example I'd like to share with you is that we had a situation where I think there was a gas station that was allowed to do some things that they shouldn't do, and that brought the city into a lawsuit. You need staff that's able to see that and understand it before you even get to a point where you faced with a lawsuit or something. So as you grow, you need to bring people in to handle the growth that's coming in, or you get overwhelmed by it.
I think on that situation there, from what I was told, don't know it for a fact, but what I was told, that some of the staff went out there and assumed that they didn't really know. They just gave it an okay.
Right. And see, but the city has responsibility for that overall building process from the initial permit to the building being completed. The city has responsibility for that. So it's on the city's, it's the city's responsibility to have experts able to analyze that problem. And if we don't, to have access to engineers that could tell us, okay, this is a problem now. And so that's what I'm advocating that we utilize. And we can't always wait to do that until the growth is here, because at that point, it's kind of late. So we can work with what we have so far, but I just want to make you aware of that point.
Okay.
Madam Clerk?
You ready? Okay. The main increases in the clerk's budget this year, there were approximately $13,000, well, just about $14,000 in projects and upgrades. That included an HR archiving project, some improvements to the Just FOIA public records platform. And then we also have budgeted $2,000 for an upgrade to the Municode meetings platform. And I believe that is actually in our 41 account. That can be removed. We've already started moving forward with that upgrade, and they have told us that our workflows that we're wanting to implement are going to be at no charge. So that's an excellent, it was excellent to hear. So we're gonna save that $2,000. So you may take that $2,000 back on that.
Okay.
And we hope to have that up and running, and that is Municode meetings agenda. That's actually with our agenda preparation, and we're hoping to have that rolled out in the next month. The other increase was $5,200 for IT equipment. That some equipment that needs to be replaced for IT. So those were the big increases for our department. Archive Social, that's our social media archiving. It went up $1,400, so there was a significant increase in that platform for this year as well.
Okay.
If you will, kind of expound on the public records upgrades. What should we expect with the upgrades?
The upgrades, when someone goes online to place a public records request, the upgrades are going to ask them more questions on the front end. We had them add one for free, and it's already helped streamline the process quite a bit. And it's a simple question: is this a police public records request, or is this a general government public records request? And so it routes it to we know that we're routing it to the right spot. But with the police department, there's a lot of other things that they can ask. You know, the citation number, or are you looking, for certain types of reports, are you looking for body camera footage? Just a lot of more drop-down menus that'll help streamline those processes, and we won't have to be emailing back the requester for clarification quite as often. And the police department and our department have already gotten together, and we kind of have a list of things that they would like to see to help. It's just a lot of drop-down
Okay.
menus, so we're excited about that, and we've already started that process as well.
Okay.
Yeah,
Is that all, Madam Clerk?
yes, thank you.
Okay, we'll go to Human Resources. Billy Joe?
The main increases for human resources is we're adding a program called for NetGeo or NetGov. And for NetGov, our current program that we have with Tyler, which is New World, does not, the application software that it has for employment applications is basically a PDF that somebody downloads and they apply. I went through the training and then we got to the end and they said we couldn't build it the way it needs to be built. So NetGeo is a national platform that allows us to have a legitimate website where the applicant would go onto the city's website, click apply for a job, and they wouldn't have to fill out multiple applications if they're applying for jobs. They fill out one application and they click all the jobs they want to apply for. They don't get one and they want to come back later, or even internal employees, if the position posts that they're interested in, they can click in and it will incorporate their information and then they can apply. And with this also, for free, we get to advertise on the government websites. Right now, we pay, and it's usually about $250 an application or an advertisement for one job. So with this would be incorporated in that with that price for that. It's a really good software and it ties into our current software. They work together with that. The other increases, risk and safety has been given to HR as well. I've taken on risk and safety. I haven't gotten a lot of that budget, but I've taken on those duties. And so there's some added travel in with that and some trainings that will need to be done with citywide risk and safety training, social media training, those sorts of things. And then computer and monitor updates, which from IT says needs to be done. Some stuff's getting kind of slow. Thank you, IT. Any questions?
Any questions for HR? Thank you, Billy Joe. Our next tab is legal, professional services. Fiscal year 2024, the budget was $190,000 with a $27,000 other current charges. For 2025, it'll be $195,000, and the other current charges will be $35,000, for a total of $230,700. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll go to finance.
Next is actually non-departmental.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. Thank you. Non-departmental.
So there was an increase, as we noted earlier, FMIT, our property insurance, went up 15%. So you'll see that increase in the 45 account. There is also added the strategic planning of $30,000 in the professional services account, along with the financial advisor. I'm working with procurement right now to do an RFP for a financial advisor, so that'll be coming out here soon. Other than that, that's the increase for transfers for the fire special assessment that was needed. We're actually addressing in the fire budget, we're gonna have the annual, or is it bi-yearly, so, excuse me, every 2 years. I'm getting tongue-tied. Every 2 years, we have a fire special assessment study to study that Benesh does in order to see what the needs are for that fire department to keep running. So you'll see that when we get to the fire department But other than that, there's no real major changes.
Any questions? Okay, we'll move on to finance staff.
For the finance department, the only really major increases were, we got with the IT. They made the recommendation that we needed to upgrade to laptops. We do have some travel in there. It was also noted by the fire department and police department about the hurricane conference. We did add that in there. But other than that, there was really no major changes.
Any questions? Now we have information technology. Jason?
The biggest increases you're gonna see with IT is gonna be in the repair, maintenance, and other current charges. What that is, there's a lot of licensing renewals. We bought some equipment for the server rooms last year, and now we have to have the license renewals each year for these. So that's gonna incur the biggest year cost. We're also gonna be migrating to Microsoft 365 licensing. We're running on 2019 now, it's no longer really supported, so we gotta make that move. And another big part is gonna be looking around about $225,000 for cloud backups. So currently, the city has backups on premise. We have nothing in the cloud. So for instance, if the PD was to get destroyed, we have no backups. So that's something we definitely need to take place and have that.
Any questions? Thank you, Jason. Next up, procurement.
So currently, we only have 2 employees in procurement, and we are planning on adding a clerk position. Adding that clerk position will need computer equipment, so that caused an increase in the 52 account. We currently do not have a vehicle, and so we're transferring a vehicle from a different department, and that went under the 44 account was the vehicle. With adding a new employee, we also need to include them in the training and the classes, and so that was an increase in the 55 account. Any questions?
So we can't use Alexis.
No.
Thank you. If there's no questions, our next up is vehicle maintenance.
Steve,
Hey, Steve.
We don't have really any major increases this year in our vehicle maintenance program. We did talk about putting on an additional employee. We currently only have 2 employees out there. In the event that one of the employees has to go out and do a field service where they fuel a vehicle or anything, it leaves us with 1 employee in the shop. So for safety reasons, if anything were to fall or if the employee were to get hurt, we have nobody in there with them. So we were asking for that, and that's really the increase we had.
Any questions? Seeing none, I'll move on. Next up is the police department. Wait, what? I'm sorry, Chief. False alarm, Chief. General building?
I'll take that one. We do have some professional services in there. As you know, we do have some structural issues with this building that we're trying to look at repairing. Other than that, there's no major changes in it. We have the repairs and maintenance, which is ACs and janitorial services and the contractual services. But other than that, like I said, there's no really major changes into that budget.
Any questions?
You said a building that we're.
Currently, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Also, we did add, audio and visual upgrades that was requested by one of the council members.
Okay. Now, Chief.
Thank you. For the police department's budget this year, there's been some changes. As everybody knows, the dispatch center was moved over to the county, so that freed up some positions. I'm proposing we migrate those from communications officer to police officer positions. Over the last few years, every member of the council's come to me about the violence around the city. Since I've been the chief, we've been reallocating manpower, taking sworn officers from administrative positions, putting them back out on the road. The city council actually, ahead of schedule, got me the gunshot detection and the flock system, which has aided us greatly in our fight against the gun violence. However, the gun violence is only part of it. The other part of it is the drugs. The guns follow the drugs. The 5 officers I'm proposing will all be dedicated toward drug enforcement. 1 will be added to the HIDTA task force, which is between the sheriff's office, the police department, DEA, and other federal agencies. Currently, well, up until about 2 months ago, I only had 2 full-time detectives in the task force. Everybody here calls me, they receive phone calls from the public about drug houses, drug deals going on. They're more sophisticated now. It's not just pulling up to the street, handing off, using cell phones, testing each other, dropping in one location and another. The deputies, they're concentrating on the county. They help us what they can. The other day, well, a couple of weeks ago, I was able to move a 3rd full-time detective out to the task force, but that's still not enough. 1 of the 5 will be a 4th investigator that will be out there. That way they'll be able to work it. The other 4 positions is to bring back our criminal interdiction unit. Those are marked units. They go around the city. They just don't do narcotics, they do quality of life. Some of these pop-up parties that are going on where social media, they'll say everybody get together here. Next thing we know, we have 400 people at the mall at 2 o'clock in the morning, and my patrol units are already stretched thin. So this will be able to allow them to do that. They will work for the sergeant in charge of the HIDTA task force, so they will work with them for the drug interdiction. They'll be up on the highway with the sheriff's office doing drug interdiction. Most of the money in this account, except for the officers, is for equipment that needs to be purchased for those 5 additional officers. I plan on buying 4 patrol cars that we were gonna turn in on leases. That'll save us money, so I don't have to turn around and buy 4 additional patrol cars with all the extra equipment. I will need to purchase radios, because when we purchased the radios, it was for the fleet the size that it currently was. And then some other equipment, guns, ballistic armor and stuff for those officers. The 1 additional position that we've asked for, the IT director came to me. Years ago, the public safety had a public safety IT person. That position was rolled into the IT department. IT is stretched out with all the new technologies and the equipment. I got together with Mr. Dumas, and we both got together and decided to put it into the police department budget. This would be strictly for the police and fire department, the public safety building. One of the problems IT was having, we're 24/7. If one of our computers goes down at 10 o'clock at night on a patrol car, they need to come out and get that unit up and running again. His overtime budget is not geared to handle that kind of stress, so that would fall under that. Plus, it would give me a better idea, because I'd be paying the overtime of what officers maybe aren't maintaining equipment if I've got a problem piece of equipment. So that would be under the IT. They would work out of the building. 1 day a week, they would go over and work with city IT, and then city IT would have a person come over 1 day a week. So that way, if my person is sick, somebody over at city IT knows the systems. And also, if he has a major project going on, we can get together schedules, so instead of something getting stretched out over a long period of time, we could send the city, the public safety IT person over. $100,000 increase in the budget is because of the dispatch under city council resolution last year. When we came to the agreement with the county for the combined dispatch, The city was gonna pay them $200,000 a year for 8 years, split between the police and fire. This is year one, the $100,000, the police department's portion. The police department the $100,000 is only for 8 years. After that, it goes down to the cost of 2 dispatchers every year, which would fall under the fire department's budget. And the only other item that I'm really doing in here is we desperately need a second interview room. Our interview rooms are audio and video recorded. If we have a major crime, we have multiple witnesses or victims or suspects with cell phones and everything, we have to keep them separate, we don't want them talking to each other. And sometimes we have them piled up 3-4 deep, waiting for interviews that could take hours each. So basically, that is what I'm asking for in this year's budget.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Chief, this is something different. When I, at the conference last week, do we have those, school zone cameras?
I am working with a company called Red Speed. They're actually approved through the Florida Police Chiefs Association. I was wanting to get the combined dispatch center off my plate before I started the next one. I was gonna come to the council, but I could explain that quickly what it is. They're actually partnered with Flock, who is our gunshot detection and license plate readers. So what'll happen is, and we're working on getting a magistrate that can see those kind of hearings. It's a $100 civil citation. They put speed cameras with license plate readers in that are working 24/7. When the yellow school zone lights are flashing and the speed zone goes down, if somebody goes through, it takes the picture. The owner is the assumed operator of the vehicle. They look at it, make sure everything's okay. It's not a police car with lights and siren going through. They send everything to the police department electronically. My traffic unit will look at it, approve them, and then it sends out a $100 citation to the violator. The state statute requires where the money goes. Some goes to the county, some goes to the Board of Ed, some goes to the police department for school, crossing guard, retention, and then some of it goes for youth programs that the police department can use it for. So you're gonna be hearing from me in a month or so with a proposal for us to do that.
Got a quick question on that. Now, I've noticed like in the summertime, when school just getting out, school is out, but those lights still are flashing at a certain time in the morning and afternoon. Well, mostly in the morning. If school is out and those lights are flashing, somebody speeds through there, will they still get a ticket?
If the lights are out, they will not. If the lights are on, what we'll have a schedule, and if they were flashing when they shouldn't be, we would give them a warning to say, hey, the lights are flashing, because they don't know if school's in or not.
Correct.
All they know is the lights are on.
Yeah.
So we would have to address that as a policy, because I don't like doing things on a case by case, because then people come in and say, well, you did this to this person, how come you didn't do that for me? So that would be something we would do as a policy.
That's all I have.
I have something. Now, Chief, I think it was this time last year that we talked about this program. And, so can you tell me what's the process and where are we in the process?
Which program?
Of getting the school,
The cameras?
the cameras?
I've already dealt with, I've already interviewed, there's a few companies that do this, I've interviewed them all. Red Speed is a company that I'm gonna recommend, there's no cost to us. They make their money off their portion of the ticket. I've met with the company, I know exactly what we need to do. I'm working with the city manager to get, the big holdup right now is the magistrate. I need a magistrate. Once that magistrate is in place, I'm ready to move forward, and the salesman calls me every 3 weeks asking me what's going on. So, I'm ready to move forward with the project as soon as the magistrate is in place.
So we're waiting for the magistrate, or is it something we have to do that we have?
It's something that the city.
Well, the chief and I are working on getting a magistrate for us that can handle that.
But the other nice part about this program, the cameras are running 24/7 around the schools. So if we have pedophiles, if we have somebody driving suspiciously, we have a record. If there's somebody we're looking for, the Flock system hits and lets us know that person's driving through school zones. So it's an additional safety feature for our schools. And then once NEBLAC comes back online, they will add that to the system.
Well, I don't know if it was the same company that you had been talking with, but anyway, the person that I was talking with at the conference, they remembered you, Lake City Police Department for the award that y'all got.
That, our traffic safety awards, yeah. We're very proud of that. The officers worked hard for that.
And back to, if you're, okay, the positions, the, officers. So these positions that you're asking for, and I think, tell me how many would be just, if I could say, simple patrolling officers, or how many will be specialty, like drug task force, how,
None will be regular patrol.
none will be regular patrol?
When we moved the dispatchers over, the council moved 4 positions to sworn officers. I'd had a North End detail, which was handling a lot of the overflow because of the violence and everything that was going. That's gonna become, and that was all on overtime, and it still is. Those are becoming regular beats. I've actually just finished interviewing to get us back up to full speed. So that position will be full. The 5 new positions, one will be a supervisor with the narcotics task force to give me 4 full-time marked investigators. And then 4 will be, if you wanna say rovers, it'll be two officer teams. But they'll be moving around the city depending on, I got a phone call today, an individual said there's a house where they think they're selling drugs out of. We are so backed up, it could take us, and Michelle, I get calls all the time. We're so backed up, it might take a few weeks to get there. The idea is I can use these officers to move them around, not for the big investigations, but the people, somebody's selling drugs on my street corner, I can sell these units over there so that the full-time guys can concentrate on the bigger dealers and the ones that are bringing the stuff into the city.
What's the turnover rate for officers in Lake City since, because I think it was last year that we had plenty of officers, if I'm not mistaken. What happened?
Well, nothing really happened, we got the 4 additional positions. So when I took over 3 years ago, we were down at least a dozen officers. And between the sponsorship program and hiring, we got up to full strength. I am just finishing up backgrounds for the sponsorship program that'll get us up to full strength, including with 4 additional positions. And I've already got applications on my desk, so if the council gives me those extra positions, then I can move in and start getting them on. You have to understand, one of the, growth is great, but right now on here, we've got enclaves in the city that we're gonna incorporate into the city. Those are all areas, so the patrol cars that I have out there, automatically, they're gonna have to start patrolling those areas, which is gonna give them less free time to be out looking for the people dealing drugs, driving around, doing things in the middle of the night, looking to do a burglary. These units are not tied down to an area, so I can move them around as needed, because seasonally, around the holidays, they need to be around the mall. That's where your robberies are occurring, people are getting, if they get mugged, that's where there's stuff going on. During the summer, we've got areas where pop-up parties show up. Out at the fairgrounds, right by the fairgrounds, they'll show up out there. Sometimes up in the North End, and the last time we had it, they're all from Jacksonville. Most of them aren't even locals. One of the nice things is with the license plate reader system, we can identify them as they're coming in. And that's why I'm looking to get the department poised for the growth, so I have the flexibility to be more proactive. It's not, right now, we're in a reactive state. Our calls for service are going up, people are, requiring more police services. So this will get us through the year, so that way, I know there's annexation going on. I talked to the city manager, the assistant city manager, the finance director. Those are all physical areas that we're gonna have to patrol, and I'm gonna need the staffing for that.
Since I have you here, I wanna ask you a question, because what I'm hearing a lot of, we're not seeing a lot of patrolling going on in these areas. And, will you share, if you will, how do you roll, how is your, patrolling? How is the schedule? What I'm saying is, you have certain areas that certain officers patrol during their daily work.
Up until I got the 4 additional officers, we only had 3 zones, 1, 2, and 3. So you had 3 officers doing the patrol. You had a sergeant and a rover. And a lot of the times, somebody's on vacation, somebody's sick, somebody's injured on duty, they're tied up in court. So I might only have 3 or 4 patrol cars for the entire city. And they're on calls. So one of the reasons you don't see, and we try and get them out there as fast as we can, the extra officers in this crime unit, which they work probably, I don't wanna do the exact times, but they were two-man teams opposite each other during our busy times. They would be the rovers. They'd be the ones going to the areas where the drag racing down the roads. If there's, the gunshot detection system keeps going off and telling us there's issues, so we can put them up there, and they're not responding. Now, it's an emergency, obviously they'll go, but they're not responding to somebody broke into my tool shed last week and I'm calling it in now. So that's what these officers are for.
You may not know off the top of your head, but I'm just curious, how many, arrests or stops have your officers made, concerning drag racing or racing or?
But yeah, I wouldn't have that, cause it depends, cause the charge can be reckless, there's speeding, it all depends on the situation is what the officer charged them with. But we do send the traffic units up, and again, that's one of the things I changed, is we now have a traffic unit that's assigned to each shift. So that officer's job is to, during the day, they're down on 90, they're up where we know the school buses are picking kids up, and they're not stopping. So that's what they do, and then the areas where we're getting complaints of speeding or stop signs or that, those units go up there and handle that, allowing the area cars to handle the calls for service and not tie them up.
But we do know that there's a big issue in our communities, and so much so as to one lady has offered her home. She doesn't live here, but she has a home here, and she has offered her home for the officers either to place a car there or just sit there or live there. That is bad when we get to that.
She actually contacted my traffic sergeant, and we'd had units up there for the last couple of weeks, not in her driveway, but monitoring that street. So we'd already been aware of that. I wasn't aware that the sergeant had sent units up there, but we'd already been up there, and we're gonna stay up there. And now I told them they could go into the driveway, so we will be doing that. Part of what I plan on doing also with the traffic units, with the cars next year is I'm gonna go with ghost graphics, which are the graphics where you can't really see them unless you're, and do the slip top cars so you don't see the strobe lights on the top, they're internal. So this way they will have body, the cameras, that's, by the way, also in here, in-car cameras that we have to have for them. We'll have everything that the police car has, but with them doing traffic, that won't be as readily identifiable as a patrol car for enforcement purposes.
Any questions, other questions for the chief?
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Now, with safety and risk management, that section was folded into HR, and Billy Joe just mentioned that during the presentation. So we're gonna go from, if there's no questions on that, on the safety and risk management being folded into HR, we're gonna go to our next section, which is public works.
Thank you, Council. Public Works had a couple of increases this year. One of our very first increases was in our contractual services. As you all know, we added on the service to go in and mow and maintain our cemeteries. That program is new, it's just getting launched, but it's working really well so far. We've had no complaints, and I've been by and checked several times. We did have to go out and help during the storm, pick up debris as we expected, but as far as general maintenance, that went really well. Under 46, we added a little for our stormwater repair. We do not have a stormwater fee, so we're having to foot that bill with taxes. So we were able to go in and add a little to that this year. Other major expenses, and this is something I wanted to note for a line item option. Under 63, the very first line item says bridges at Lake Montgomery. We got a quote on replacing those two bridges. Those are the walkways. Those have nothing to do with the actual construction at the pier. That's the two walkways that go from side to side. That price was put in there out of the same material that the pier is being built out of. They are currently wood, so if anybody were to come up and say, can they be built cheaper? That is a correct answer. We just quoted them as the same material that's there so that it would be uniform. We also noticed on the second line item in 63, we have a pull-in-place liner. That is something that we use if we want to save costs on replacing stormwater, we're able to line it from the inside to prevent excavation, so there's a huge cost savings there. And the last major deal is on 64. You see we have a bucket truck in there, that is currently in this year's budget. However, we will not be able to take receipt of the truck until current year, so we went ahead and rolled that. So that 200 is in there actually from last year's budget is currently in this year. Other than that, your public works department is doing great.
Did y'all get that paper? Put that paper in your budget?
That paper, yes, sir, it actually is. It's actually under 64, second to the bottom line item is a track paper.
Okay.
Thank you. Next up is public assistance. That's the Lake City Animal Shelter. They're asking for an increase. Senior services, they're being increased slightly. Historical Museum has been increased from 5,000 to 10,000. And then we have, in the past, we had Annie Maddox youth programs with 30,000, Black Chamber of Commerce for 25,000. We're not funding those at 25. The Chamber of Commerce is being funded, not at the rate of last year, 25,000, but at 14,500. Quarterback Club, payment number 404 will be made this year. Maria Smith Gun Violence Prevention is at about 200,000. It'll still be 200,000 next year. It can carry over. For promotional events, we're still going with 75,000 just as last year. And for the mayor's matching grant program, that's going to be at 100,000. That gives us a total of 394,500. Overall total of 689,000.
How did we come up with 14,500 for Chamber of Commerce?
I think that was their request.
Yes, they actually are not doing the fireworks anymore, so they removed that from what they usually do. I think the county is gonna start doing it. And also, just to add why I got it, the animal shelter, you should see them coming to give a presentation. Their contract is actually ending this month. But we did wanna go ahead and add that in there in case it does go through. But you will be seeing a presentation at the next council meeting from them.
So I still need clarity on the 14,500. What is it for?
We actually have Joy from the chamber if y'all wanna ask him.
Good evening, everybody. So it kind of breaks down into a few things. The biggest expense is the Gateway City Craft Beer and Wine Festival. That's one of our largest fundraisers of the year. And that helps us be able to do programs for small businesses throughout the year, helps offset that cost. Another thing that fee goes to is making sure that Santa is at the park every year. Full transparency, that agreement with the chamber and the city predates long before I've even lived in Lake City. But that helps us get the building every year that's donated so graciously, but making sure that building is decorated to the best it can be. And also, we make a small donation to other nonprofits who help us step up and kind of man Santa while he's there, help with the crowds, oftentimes provide us Santa and provide treats. Also, there's $750 allotted to the replacing of the Christmas lights that you see downtown. Again, that is something that's been in place long before I've ever been around. Anytime Christmas lights need to be replaced, we purchase them and then give them back to the city. And then lastly, is just relocation packet requests. Since COVID, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. The amount of people who have moved into Columbia County and Lake City is astronomical. We get calls and visits every single day, mostly calls of they're looking to move to Lake City. Can we send them information on the community? So we load them down with whatever they want, and we are taking on that cost of postage, and it's getting to a point that we cannot afford it. The county is matching the same request or same amount of money to help with the relocation request, and it just helps get information out about the community.
How much is those Santa money?
It kind of depends. We are working, I've said it today, with our Leadership Lake City program. We spend a lot of time negotiating with the North Pole, but this year we're trying to up it to where every night we can do more nights, because last year I think we did 4. The goal this year is to do 6, if not 8, but also to have Mrs. Claus with him. It's something that I don't know how the chamber got involved in doing that, but it's something we're really passionate about, because if you've ever been there or volunteered, you know that a lot of times it's the less fortunate kids who are there, that they don't get to go to Disney for Christmas or pay to have Santa come to their house personally, and that's why we keep it going.
I would like to see that money go into the children's gifts rather than to Santa.
Well, a lot of times, when I say we pay Santa, let me be just very clear. So when we partner with like Another Way, the Pregnancy Care Center, Kiwanis Rotary, we're paying them to give us Santa. So they're using that money to fund their programs. We make $0 off Santa. It really is just making sure that it happens and to guarantee that it is there.
Also, can I say one thing? I do believe we discussed that, we wanted to move the Mariah Smith Fund, gun violence prevention, over to the PD
Yes, we did, yes.
and take it out of public assistance.
Thank you for that, I forgot all about it.
So if we move it to the PD, what y'all do with it?
Chief, you wanna come and speak to that?
When the city manager asked me about the PD taking this over, it wasn't very long ago, I started looking. I know Gainesville is starting a new gun violence prevention program. I'm trying to get details on that. I'd like to look maybe, and I'm just spitballing here, speak with Pastor Mobley up at North Star, who's very good at getting grants, see if maybe we can roll some of this money into some programs that actually are federally recognized that work, and maybe like a matching grant, so we can get the most bang for the buck. But right now, I'm still in the process of having my community relations coordinator make phone calls with some of the other departments to find out what works. One thing I did find is, I believe it's Gainesville, they're on project number 4, because the first 3 apparently weren't effective, so I'm trying to learn from their mistakes so I don't do the same thing. But we do plan on getting something done the next budget year, and I'd like something that's sustainable.
Now, y'all have anything?
No, that makes sense though.
Any more questions for the chief?
That might come back later.
Okay, thank you, chief. Next is solid waste. This is a contract that the city has with Waste Hauler. Fiscal year 24 was $565,748. This year is $588,293. The bad debts that we pay is $13,000 last year. They're estimating $9,335 this year. Overall total last year $579,405. This year $597,628. This is a continuing contract. If I'm not mistaken, I think they're gonna come before the board.
That's with Waste Pro, right?
Yes, Waste Pro. Continuation of the existing contract.
So they're coming before the board?
Yes.
I think they need to do a little better job on the yard pickup.
Any additional questions on this one? I'll move on to our CRA.
Growth management.
I have no idea why I keep skipping. That's the third one I skipped tonight. Let's go to growth management.
Good evening, everyone. Mr. Young wanted me to apologize that he is not here tonight, and so he asked me to step in his place. So I'm gonna go through the budget, kind of answer some of the high points and answer any questions you have. He did want me to let the board know if there's any clarity that he needs on a line item that he needs to address, he can do it by phone call if we need, and so that way he can address them if that's needed. And I'm pretty sure we can cover most of it though. I'll go through it. So I'd like to start off with professional services. You're gonna see a big increase in that. The biggest reason for that is the annexation of the enclaves. We have to survey every single one of those parcels, about 300 and something parcels that we're gonna have a survey done of. And so that's about $150,000 of that budget is just that alone. In account 34, you're gonna see a couple big line items there. One is for Civics Plus computer program. That is for a complete new software package for the growth management department. And that package will give the department the ability to do, along with what it's doing right now, online permitting, stuff like that, online code enforcement. But what it will enhance is it'll allow us to do planning online also. And currently, if somebody comes to the city and they want to apply for a rezoning application or site plan, they want to develop in our city, they have to submit a paper application to us. And we don't have no way for them to submit it online. And if they want to pay, they either have to mail us a check or they have to come in person and pay by card. And that's the only two ways that they have to pay for the planning and zoning fees right now. So this will make it easier for us to be able to work with the developers that are outside of Lake City along with inside of Lake City and making us a little more attractive to the developers. And that software will also give code enforcement the ability to go out into the field, do inspections of a property and have it geolocated and when they're out there. And then when we're doing virtual inspections and stuff like that for the building official, that will also be geo-synced too for when he's out there and doing the inspection. It'll have the location of where he's at, the time he's at that he done the inspection, and he'll be able to put the notes in right there while he's in the field. And instead of having to wait to come back to the office, put the notes in, make sure he got everything, and then move forward. Any questions on that? All right, the next big line item is you're gonna see is mobility costs. It's $200,000. That is for the implementation and creation of a mobility plan for the city of Lake City. Something the city has never had. Currently, we collect no fees at all for transportation. And as we get no funding coming in for development or developers that are coming in, they don't pay any fees to help keep up our infrastructure. This mobility fee, the implementation of it will make the city more multimodal, and these fees will replace our current transportation concurrency analysis. And what they will do is they will be charged by the square footage or by the type of development, and it can bring in a lot of revenue for repaving the streets that are currently in bad shape, potholes everywhere, stuff like that. The only thing you'll need to do is we need to add like bike lanes, sidewalks, and this will make the city a lot more mobile. You've got a new school going in, a lot of roads around there that need a lot of funding and for the infrastructure up there, and this will be a way for us to be able to do that. Unlike a transportation impact fee that a lot of communities have, the transportation impact fee has to be used on the road that is collected, just like your utility fees and our utility impact fees. The mobility fee can be used anywhere in the city, and as long as it's used to make the city or the street multimodal, adding another mode of transportation to the street. And so it's going to help a lot of the senior citizens and the youth, people that can't afford a car or something like that. It's going to help them be able to get back and forth, and that's what some of these programs will be. So any questions on that?
I'd just like to add, Robert, that one of the reasons for this, when a truck comes to the city to go to a site, it doesn't just go directly to that site. It uses our roads to get to the site. And a lot of times it's damaging roads on the way. We have no way of recovering that cost of fixing those damaged roads. So one road that we talked about, Councilman Hill, is in Plantation. You see how those roads are damaged by heavy garbage trucks and things like that, and construction vehicles. So this will give us a means of collecting some of that money back. Also, our inspection, our inspector really is doing virtual inspections, so he doesn't have to actually go to the site. He can do the inspection for his office. We're gonna try to do more of that so that we can get more inspections done without tying up a lot of time going back and forth.
Yeah, so one of the line items, you got view specs. That's $7,000. That's an additional program that we're adding in. Kind of what Ms. Rosenthal was talking about is virtual inspections. That's going to give the building official, along with the inspectors, the ability to go out and do these inspections without actually having to go out there. And that the nice thing about it, currently if we do FaceTime or anything like that, do a virtual inspection, there's no data showing no audit trail or any of that. And this view specs will give us the audit trail that we need to be able to communicate the inspection. but it'll also geolocate so that we know that they're actually on that address. You know, currently, it's just if we go out there with an iPhone and they do a FaceTime, we don't know if they're on their property, a neighbor's property, or whose property they're on. The ViewSpec will allow us to make sure that they're actually on the property that they're supposed to when they're doing the inspection.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Are there any additional questions for Robert, growth managers? Okay, thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Now we'll go into our CRA.
The CRA, the ad valorem taxes went up slightly. That is due to the increased property value, so it's no additional, it was still at the current 4.9 mils, was what that was projected. The grant is the CDBG grant that we have. We've had it for several years now. That's for the Wilson Park Amphitheater. That project's still ongoing. Other than that, we did increase the repairs and maintenance. That was primarily for Darby Pavilion. Also, our community program director asked to include polling stations for her events. Also, to replace the commercial fan for Darby Pavilion. Other than that, it's pretty much the same as last year.
Thank you, Angie. Any questions? Seeing none, I'm moving on to fire.
Good evening. The only added request that I had personally was the $20,055 for the sponsorship program. That was approved back in May, I believe, as an agenda item. 64, we did have $8,000. That's an IT request to replace our computer towers with laptops. So that's a request. Everything else, if you look at 31, there's an increase of $35,000. That's what Ms. Andy was discussing earlier. That's for the fire assessment that we have to do that study every 2 years. 34, there's $100,000 in contractual. That's for our dispatch center for 2 personnel. And 45, our insurance went up $15,000. 49, an increase of $28,000 to the tax collector. And then at the very bottom, we just increased the transfer of the debt services. So the questions for me?
How's that truck going?
I've been posting pictures on Facebook, but the cab is on it. They put the turntable on it, and starting to build the boxes and everything now. So January 2025, we should have it.
Good. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Next up is airport.
Good evening. So the only real increases are for my linemen. I created a step schedule for them for an increase in lineman pay so I could be more able to compete with the outside companies as far as pay to keep my employees with us. So there's just a little increase there. I do have a savings of our aircraft tracking software of $6,000 on that. So that was picked up by the FDOT State Aviation Department. So that is a savings there. Pretty much everything else is fairly much of an increase.
Any questions for the airport? Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I do have,
Hold on.
let's talk about the salary. So I see it was, 294,009, went up to 365,133. Help me out with those numbers.
Let's see, we and the step increase for the linemen. We moved them up to what some of the status were for the local areas of this position at other airports. So that was a salary comparison chart that we received. So our own salary chart that we have, I increased them into that chart to give them a step increase so that I have a lineman 1, 2, and 3 position. Yes.
And they, tell me, how did you do the? Okay, yeah, I did. So that was good. Yeah, that was in question. And I'm telling you, I just, on these salaries, I just, it just throws a flag, not so much all red, but it's past orange. And, so this is all of yours though, right?
Yes.
Okay, so they're not really, this one gets it, this one doesn't get it?
No, this is, I moved everybody accordingly to give a scale so that I can compete with the outside companies that are around us, so that I can actually keep an employee. I've had several employees outside of the area, or that obviously they're getting paid more. Comparison of Homes of Merit, they're starting their people at $21 an hour, and that's on airport property. So I'm competing with outside companies to retain my employees. So, and once we get the employees trained, that's 2 years of education that's going to now trade in a mobile home or to another company.
Yeah, I think the point is that when they have an employee trained, it gets expensive to replace that employee. Because anybody who gets them to train again. Any additional questions for the airport? Thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
All right, so we were gonna stop here and pick up here. Yes.
I'd like to go ahead and go over the next 3 really quickly. I don't think there are gonna be any questions over that. That's the.
Is everybody okay with that? Going over the next 3 real quickly? That's okay? All right, proceed.
So the next is debt service. We did not acquire any new debt, so it did not change from the prior year. Does anybody have any questions on that one? Okay.
No.
The next is sales tax bond fund. That is where we borrowed the money for the new fire station and for the new city hall. Currently, that is the $1,642,357 is what's left of that bond money. And that's allocated towards the new city hall project. We would have to more likely acquire a new loan in order to do anything with the city hall.
Yes.
But that's what's left of that money. Does anybody have any questions on that?
No, y'all seeing that?
And then the last one we'll go over tonight is the airport construction fund. That's where any major projects, all the federal and state grants are budgeted. Currently, the only grant that we have to roll over from the current year is the South Airfield drainage study, which is covered 90% by the FAA and 10% by FDOT. For a total of $165,000. And that's all we have currently for that one. I did want to ask the council before we close tonight. I know Mr. Rosenthal brought up about an alternative millage rate of 5.241 mils. Would the council be interested in me doing the calculation to see what that would look like for tomorrow's meeting?
Sounds great.
Okay, I'll do that. Other than that, I don't have anything.
Is there anything else that the council members want to go over before we close? I'll turn it back over to the chair.
With that being said, all minds are clear? Meeting adjourned.